Story 1. The footsteps in the attic. Mia loved when her parents went out for the evening. At 16, she enjoyed the independence, the chance to curl up with her headphones, scroll through her phone, and snack without anyone reminding her to clean up. Tonight was no different. Her parents had gone to a late dinner with friends, promising to be back around 1 in the morning. The house was hers until then. She sat cross-legged on her bed, a book balanced on her knees, music humming softly in her ears. Outside, the wind whistled faintly, shaking the trees against the side of the house. It was a typical suburban night, quiet, safe, and predictable, or so she thought. It started just after midnight. Mia shifted in bed, stretching, when she heard it. A faint, deliberate thump above her head. She froze. Her house was a single-story ranch, with only a shallow crawlspace attic above the ceiling. No one ever went up there. The sound came again, slow, heavy, dragging footsteps. Her first thought was rational. Probably a raccoon or maybe a squirrel that had gotten inside. She tried to laugh it off, shaking her head. Animals made noises, houses creaked, nothing unusual. But then the steps continued, evenly spaced, almost human. Mia slipped off her headphones, heart beating faster. She held her breath. The noise stopped. For several minutes she sat perfectly still, straining to hear anything else. When nothing came, she exhaled shakily and decided she was just being paranoid. Still, the unease clung to her. She got out of bed, tiptoed into the hallway, and stared up at the attic hatch in the ceiling. It was closed, just as it always was. She grabbed a flashlight from the kitchen drawer, opened the back door, and stepped outside. The night air was cool, grounding. She turned the flashlight upward. Her roofline stretched unbroken, no signs of movement. There was no upstairs, no reason footsteps should have been above her room. Convincing herself she was overthinking, she went back inside and locked the door. By 1 in the morning, her parents still hadn't returned. Mia tried to distract herself with TV. Halfway through a rerun, the sound came again, louder this time, pacing, heel to toe, heel to toe. She muted the television. Her pulse thundered in her ears. The attic hatch in the hallway gave a faint creak. Mia grabbed her phone with trembling fingers and dialed her mother, straight to voicemail. She tried her father. No answer. The footsteps continued, circling above her room, stopping suddenly as though listening. She wanted to scream, but fear locked her throat. She typed out a message to a friend. "Someone's in my attic." Before she could hit send, the sound of weight shifting overhead made her phone slip from her hands. Silence followed. Then Krieg, the attic hatch moved. Just slightly, but enough that Mia's stomach dropped. A gap appeared, and from the darkness above, a pale hand curled around the wooden edge. Fingers. Human fingers. Mia's scream finally tore free. She bolted into the kitchen, slammed the door shut, and dialed 911 with shaking hands. The dispatcher answered, calm and steady, but Mia's words tumbled out in gasps. Someone's in my attic. Please, they're coming down. Stay on the line, the dispatcher said. Officers are on their way. Can you get out of the house? I don't know if I can. Mia's voice cracked. She heard a dull thump from the hallway. She grabbed the nearest knife from the counter and ran to the back door, fumbling with the lock. Outside, the yard was black, except for the pale pool of the porch light. She ran barefoot across the grass, heart hammering, until she reached the edge of the street. She didn't stop until she saw the red and blue lights of the approaching patrol car. 2 officers swept through the house while Mia waited, wrapped in a blanket one had given her, shaking uncontrollably. After what felt like hours, they returned. "You were right," one officer said grimly. "Someone's been living up there." Mia's blood turned to ice. The police had found bedding tucked into the attic's corner, along with a small stash of food wrappers and bottles of water. But the most disturbing find was a battered notebook. Inside, page after page was filled with her name written over and over in jagged handwriting. There was no sign of the man himself. The officers suspected he had escaped out the other side of the attic, while Mia ran from the house. Her parents arrived moments later, pale and horrified as they pulled her into their arms. Mia barely heard their words. Her eyes kept drifting upward, to the ceiling, imagining the soft thud of footsteps and the slow creak of that hatch. From that night forward, she never slept in her room again, because even when the house was silent, she swore she could still hear its faint, dragging footsteps, pacing above her head. Story 2. The Whisper Through the Vent. Daniel was 12 years old, the night his mother left him home alone for the first time. She worked the closing shift at the diner across town and promised she'd be home by midnight. He insisted he was old enough. He had snacks, video games, and the TV to keep him company. By 9 o'clock, the house was quiet except for the faint hum of the heater and the rapid clicking of his controller. The warmth from the vent beside his bed puffed against his leg. Everything felt normal, safe, until the whisper. At first he thought it was part of the game, some audio effect from the haunted castle level he was exploring. But then he muted the television, and the sound remained. Daniel, it came so faintly, drawn out like a hiss, drifting through the vent at his feet. Daniel froze, controller slipping from his hands. He stared at the metal grate, heart thudding. After several seconds of silence, he laughed nervously. Probably just the heater. Air rushing through ducts made weird noises, right? He turned the game back on, turning the volume up loud. But 10 minutes later, the voice came again, louder, clearer. Daniel, come down to the basement. This time he jumped up, knocking the controller to the floor. His throat tightened. Someone was saying his name. Someone was inside the vents. He ran down the hallway, flicking on every light he passed until he reached the locked basement door. He pressed his ear to it, holding his breath. The air on the other side felt unnaturally cold, as if something waited just below. Daniel, the whisper came again, echoing faintly through the wood. I'm waiting. He backed away, every instinct screaming not to open that door. Daniel grabbed the cordless phone from the kitchen and dialed his mother. Straight to voicemail, he left a rushed, shaky message, telling her something was wrong with the house, begging her to come home. The whispering followed him no matter where he went, from the vents in the living room, the bathroom, even the one above the refrigerator. Each time it was closer, more insistent. By 10:30, Daniel had barricaded himself in his room with pillows stacked against the vent. He sat on the floor clutching a baseball bat his dad had left behind years ago. The room was silent except for his uneven breathing. He almost convinced himself he had imagined it all. Then the vent rattled. It wasn't a normal rattle, it was violent, like something or someone was inside the ducts, crawling closer. Dust shook loose, sprinkling the carpet. Daniel's hands went slick with sweat. He forced himself to look. Behind the slats of the vent he saw a shadowed face, two pale eyes, staring directly into his room. Daniel screamed and bolted to the closet, slamming the door shut and pressing his back against it. He fumbled for the phone, dialing 911 with shaking fingers. 911, what's your emergency? There's someone in my house, in the vents. His voice cracked, sobbing now. He keeps saying my name. The dispatcher's voice remained calm, asking for his address. Daniel gave it, words tumbling over themselves. Stay where you are, the dispatcher said firmly. Police are on their way. Can you stay on the line with me? Before Daniel could answer, the phone beeped. A second call was coming in. He glanced at the screen. Unknown number. He shouldn't have answered, but he did. The same whisper hissed through the speaker. Daniel, I can see you. Daniel dropped the phone as if it had burned him. The closet door handle twitched. Slowly, deliberately, it turned back and forth, though he pressed his full weight against it. Then silence. The longest, most suffocating silence of his life. When the pounding on the front door came minutes later, he nearly fainted from relief. Police, a voice shouted. Open up. Daniel burst from the closet, sprinted down the hall and threw open the door. Two officers stood on the porch, their flashlights cutting through the night. They swept through the house while Daniel stood trembling on the front lawn. He watched as one officer disappeared into the basement, the other prying open the vent covers. When they returned, their faces were pale. Someone had been there. The basement window was shattered, glass littering the floor. Muddy boot prints led to the vent system, smearing through the dust. Whoever it was had crawled inside the ducts, inching closer and closer to Daniel's room. But there was no sign of them now. They must have slipped out while we arrived, one officer muttered. Daniel's mother pulled up minutes later, leaping from her car and scooping him into her arms. She tried to soothe him, but Daniel kept his eyes fixed on the vents. He could still hear it faint just beneath the sound of the police radios crackling. A whisper, soft and patient, drifting through the metal. Daniel. Story 3. The man at the glass door. Emily was 19, and though she would never admit it, she didn't like babysitting her younger brother when her parents went out. Not because of him, he was only 8 and easy to handle, but because of the house. Their family's suburban home had a wall of sliding glass doors across the back, opening onto a dark stretch of yard that ended at a thick line of trees. During the day, the view was peaceful. At night, the glass became a mirror, reflecting only the inside of the house while hiding whatever might be standing in the blackness beyond. Emily tried to ignore it as she and her brother, Tyler, sat on the couch watching a movie. She kept the remote clutched tightly in her hand, pretending to be relaxed. By 10 o'clock, Tyler had fallen asleep with his head on her lap. She muted the TV and shifted carefully so as not to wake him. The silence pressed in. Beyond the glass, the night seemed too heavy, like the trees were leaning closer. That was when she saw the movement, a flicker at the corner of her vision. She turned her head slowly, eyes narrowing, and froze. A man was standing at the sliding glass door, tall, motionless, his face pressed close to the glass, lips curled into a wide, unnatural smile. His eyes locked directly onto hers. Emily's breath caught in her throat. For a full 3 seconds, she didn't move, didn't blink, praying her mind was playing tricks on her. But the figure remained. The smile never faltered. Her heart thudded violently against her ribs. She forced her voice out, hoarse and trembling. Who's there? The man tilted his head slowly to one side. He didn't speak. He didn't blink. He only lifted one hand and tapped his fingertip against the glass. Tap, tap, tap. Emily jerked upright, nearly waking Tyler. She scooped him into her arms and carried him upstairs. Every step a battle not to break into a sprint. She locked them both inside the upstairs bathroom, clutching her phone as she dialed 911. There's a man at my door, she whispered, her voice cracking. He won't go away. The dispatcher's calm voice came through, telling her to stay put, that officers were on the way. But downstairs, the tapping grew louder, faster. She pressed her ear against the bathroom door, straining to hear. Then it stopped. The silence was worse. Minutes stretched on, broken only by Tyler's sleepy whimpers as he stirred. Emily stroked his hair, murmuring, "It's okay, it's okay," though her own voice trembled with terror. Finally, she worked up the courage to creep toward the upstairs hallway window, pulling the curtain back just enough to peer outside. The backyard was empty. The man was gone. She nearly sobbed in relief until her eyes adjusted and she saw movement inside the house. At the far end of the hallway, half hidden in shadow, the man stood inside. His smile was wider now, stretching unnaturally across his face. He didn't move toward her, he only stared, head tilted, as though savoring her fear. Emily's scream tore through the house. She slammed the bathroom door shut, locking it again, dragging Tyler back into the bathtub with her. The sound of heavy footsteps echoed through the hallway. "Stay with me," she begged her brother, clutching him tightly. "Don't make a sound." The footsteps stopped outside the bathroom. The doorknob jiggled softly, almost playfully. Then came a whisper, raspy, inhumanly low. "Let me in." Emily's body went rigid. She clamped her hand over Tyler's mouth to stifle his sobs. The knob twisted harder, rattling against the lock. Emily's tears streamed silently down her face as she clutched the phone with her free hand, whispering frantically to the dispatcher still on the line. "They're almost there," the dispatcher promised. "Just hold on, stay hidden." The knob suddenly stopped moving. Silence. Emily pressed her ear to the door, straining. Nothing. No footsteps retreating, no sound at all. And then 3 loud bangs shook the door. "Let me in," Emily screamed. Tyler cried. The door shuddered against the force, but the lock held. She thought for sure it would splinter, that the man would break through at any moment, until red and blue lights flooded the windows. Sirens wailed outside. The pounding stopped. Police voices shouted downstairs. "Come out with your hands up." Emily sobbed with relief, clutching Tyler as heavy boots thundered through the house. Minutes later, officers burst into the bathroom, weapons drawn, sweeping the space. "It's okay," one told her. "You're safe now." But the man was gone. No broken locks, no shattered glass. Every door was still bolted from the inside. The only evidence were muddy footprints on the carpet leading from the sliding glass door into the hallway, and stopping just outside the bathroom. Emily's parents arrived soon after, frantic, holding her as if they'd never let go. The police promised to keep watch, to investigate, but Emily knew one thing, they didn't. When the officers escorted her outside, she glanced back at the house. In the reflection of the glass door, just for a second, she swore she saw it. A face, smiling, waiting. Story 4. The wrong number caller. The first call came just after 9. Jack was stretched out on the living room couch, scrolling through his phone when the landline rang. Hardly anyone used it anymore, but his parents insisted on keeping it in case of emergencies. He picked up lazily. "Hello." A man's voice, deep and slightly hoarse, replied. "Is Sarah there?" Jack frowned. "No, you've got the wrong number." The line went quiet for a beat, then clicked dead. Shrugging, Jack set the phone back on its base and returned to his scrolling, but 10 minutes later the phone rang again. "Hello," Jack answered, more irritated this time. "Put Sarah on," the voice demanded. It was the same man. I told you, there's no Sarah here, Jack snapped. You've got the wrong number. Stop calling. Again, silence. Then a low chuckle before the line cut off. A prickle of unease crawled down Jack's spine. He muted the TV and listened. The house was quiet. He shook it off. People misdialed numbers all the time. At 9:45, the phone rang again. Jack snatched it up, ready to yell. Listen, don't lie to me, the man interrupted, his voice sharper now. I know she's there. Jack's breath caught. There's no one here but me. Stop calling. He slammed the phone down, heart pounding harder than he wanted to admit. He tried distracting himself with a video game, but every flicker of shadow in the corner of his eye made him jump. By 10:30, he was almost relaxed again until the phone rang a fourth time. Jack answered, voice tight with anger. What do you want? The whisper that came through was so soft he had to press the phone against his ear to catch it. I'm outside. Tell Sarah I'm waiting. Jack froze, every hair on his body rising. He turned slowly toward the dark windows. The curtains hung still. The yard beyond was a black void. You're sick, Jack hissed. Leave me alone. He dropped the receiver and backed away. That was when his cell phone, lying on the coffee table, lit up. An incoming call. Unknown number, hands trembling. Jack picked it up and pressed it to his ear. Hello, Jack, the voice rasped. He nearly dropped the phone. The man knew his name. Jack bolted upstairs, slamming his bedroom door and locking it. His pulse pounded so hard he could barely hear as he dialed 911. The dispatcher answered, calm and professional, but Jack's words tumbled out in a terrified rush. Someone keeps calling, he knows my name. He says he's outside, please. You've got to send someone. The dispatcher assured him officers were on their way. Stay in a safe place. Don't open the door for anyone but the police. Jack clung to that instruction, crouched in the corner of his room, phone still pressed to his ear. His eyes darted to the window, half expecting to see a face peering in. The house phone rang again. The shrill sound echoed up the stairs. Jack flinched, clutching the cell tighter. Don't answer it, the dispatcher said firmly. But then came a new noise, a faint buzz from downstairs. Jack's blood ran cold. That wasn't the landline, it was his mother's office phone. The one in the study, the one inside the house. I think Jack's voice cracked, barely audible. I think he's already in here. The dispatcher's tone hardened. Lock your door, stay quiet. Officers are 2 minutes out. Jack's breath came in shallow gasps. He forced himself to inch toward the door, ear pressed against the wood. A floorboard creaked in the hallway. He slapped a hand over his mouth, trying not to make a sound. Another creak followed, closer this time. Then a long, dragging step, as if someone were deliberately taking their time. The doorknob twitched. Jack backed into the farthest corner of the room, eyes locked on the handle as it rattled once, twice, then stilled. Silence. The next sound was a knock, gentle, almost polite. Then the voice, muffled through the door. Jack, tell Sarah I'm waiting. Tears streamed down his face. He whispered desperately into the cell. Please hurry, please hurry. The dispatcher's voice was steady. They're pulling onto your street now. Just hold on. From outside, red and blue lights flared against the curtains. Sirens wailed closer. The knob rattled violently one last time before the footsteps retreated, fading down the hall. Moments later, pounding shook the front door. Police. Jack burst from his room, racing downstairs and throwing himself into the arms of 2 uniformed officers. He babbled the story, pointing toward the study. The house was searched top to bottom. Every lock was still engaged. No windows broken. No sign of forced entry, but in his mother's office the phone was off the hook. Muddy boot prints tracked across the carpet, leading from the back door to the desk, then stopping as if the man had simply vanished. Jack's parents arrived soon after, pale and shaken. His mother held him tight, whispering that everything would be okay. But Jack barely heard her, because as the officers packed up to leave, the landline rang again. One officer picked it up cautiously. After a pause, his face drained of color. He held the receiver away, and even from across the room, Jack could hear it. That same rasping voice, soft and deliberate. Tell Sarah I'm waiting. Story 5. The open closet door. The storm had been building all evening. 17-year-old Sarah sat propped up in bed, the glow of her phone illuminating her face as thunder rolled across the night sky. Her parents were away for the weekend, leaving her with the entire house to herself. At first, the solitude had been exciting, music blasting, snacks at midnight, no one to nag her about homework. But as the rain lashed harder against the windows, the thrill had worn thin. She glanced up from her phone and frowned. Her closet door was open, not wide, just enough that she could see a sliver of darkness between the white panels. She could have sworn she'd shut it earlier. She always did. Rolling her eyes, she got out of bed, padded across the room, and pushed it closed until the latch clicked. She returned to her bed, convincing herself it was nothing, just her imagination. 20 minutes later, lightning flashed, filling the room with stark white light. Her stomach dropped. The closet door was open again. Sarah sat frozen, staring at the gap. She hadn't heard it move. She hadn't heard anything. Slowly, she slid from bed and grabbed her phone. Maybe she could record it, prove to herself it was just the storm shaking the old house. She set the phone to record video, propped it up on her nightstand facing the closet, and climbed back under the covers. Every second felt stretched thin, the silence broken only by rain hammering against the window. The door didn't move. After several minutes, she stopped the recording and replayed it. The footage showed her room in eerie stillness, but as the video reached the end, a faint sound came through her phone's speakers, deep, uneven breathing. Her skin prickled. She muted the phone instantly, her pulse hammering in her ears. "Get a grip," she whispered to herself. "You're just freaked out." She forced herself out of bed again, shut the door firmly, and even shoved her laundry basket against it for good measure. Then she climbed back beneath her blankets, pulling them tight to her chin. Minutes crawled by. Another rumble of thunder shook the house. Lightning flared. The closet door was open, wider this time. The laundry basket had been pushed aside. Sarah's throat went dry. She couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Her phone was still clutched in her hand, and she realized she had already dialed to 911 without even noticing, her thumb trembling over the call button. Then movement. For the briefest moment, as the lightning illuminated the room, she saw it. A hunched figure crouched in the darkness of the closet, its pale outline bent at an unnatural angle, its head tilted as though watching her. Sarah hit the call button. The dispatcher answered, but she could barely form words. Someone's in my closet. Please, hurry, stay on the line," the dispatcher said firmly. "Get somewhere safe if you can. Officers are being sent right now." I can't move," Sarah whispered, tears spilling down her face. Her entire body trembled. The closet door creaked wider, inch by inch. She bolted. Adrenaline shoved her body into motion. She flung the blankets aside, sprinted from the room, and thundered down the stairs barefoot. The front door's lock fumbled beneath her shaking hands, but she wrenched it open and burst into the rain. The storm swallowed her screams as she ran down the driveway, phone still pressed to her ear, sobbing to the dispatcher. She didn't stop until flashing red and blue lights cut through the sheets of rain. 2 officers met her in the street, pulling her into the back of the patrol car while another swept into the house. Sarah sat shivering, drenched and broken, as she tried to explain. A radio crackled. The officer inside called out, his voice grim, "Closet's empty. No one here." Sarah shook her head violently. "No, I saw him. I swear he was there." The police searched every inch of the house. The back door was still locked, all the windows sealed. No signs of forced entry. But when they returned, one of the officers was holding something. A muddy footprint, not just one, several, tracked faintly across her bedroom carpet. They started at the closet leading to the side of her bed, and then they stopped, right where she had been lying. Sarah couldn't breathe. The officer crouched beside her, speaking gently, but she barely heard him. She was staring at the house, at the dark rectangle of her bedroom window glowing faintly against the storm, because just for a moment, between flashes of lightning, she saw it, the closet door, slowly swinging shut.